The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody in Europe. Good afternoon, everybody in China. Welcome to the EU SME Centre webinar series. Before we move to the topic of our today webinar, let me first introduce few technical features of our webinar. On your screen, you will see the window with the questions. Please, during the webinar, don't hesitate to ask any questions you might have to the topic, either to the speaker or to the EU SME Centre. We would address all your questions at the end. And if we do not manage to answer your questions at the end during the Q&A session, we will get back to you via the email. For those who are for the first time participating in our webinar series, let me first introduce our EU SME Centre in Beijing. EU SME Centre in Beijing was established in 2010, and its purpose is to help European SMEs to export to China or invest to China. We are fully funded by European Union, which allows us to provide all our services free of charge. Our services cover several topics. We have in-house experience in business development, legal and tax advice, standards and conformity, and HR and training. Our services we provide in two main ways. First, information and advice, which covers inquiries either via email or phone consultation or face-to-face consultation. We published more than 80 publications, including reports, case studies, and horizontal guidelines. We, on a regular basis, organize trainings either in China or in Europe on topics which are associated with our aim, with our goal, which is helping European companies get business to get to China and develop their business activities here. We do the webinars as today, and we provide free of charge free databases. First one is the database, regularly updated database on exhibitions and international affairs in China. Then we have a database on service providers, including law companies, consulting companies, tax advisors, and so on. In addition to information and advice, we provide support services, which includes hot desking. So if it happens that you have a business trip to China and you would like to meet business partners, you can use meetings room in our office, and you can spend with us as well a few weeks using internet connection and the phone. We do as well matchmaking and networking. As I mentioned, we issued more than 80 publications, including reports and the guidelines. And here you can see some of our recent publication: healthcare sector report, environmental essay, selling air quality and emissions monitoring systems in China, and so on. The easiest way how to access our services is via online portal. So if you wish so, you can register for free on our website, which you can see. It's eusmecenter.org.cn, and then you can free of charge ask the expert service on the field of the business development, legal, tax, standards, and conformity. All the publications are available to you for the downloading. We have as well a recording of our webinars. So based on the topic you are interested in, you can download the webinars. So now to our today's webinar topic. And it is about how to wisely pull your business out of China. You may say that this topic is a little bit premature because many of you are just thinking about coming to China and are building your strategies. However, to have at least idea of all possible options which you have in hand, it's very important to have this idea even at the beginning, even before you come to the China. And for this topic, we have invited today legal expert. He is Mr. Richard Hoffman. Warmly welcome. Mr. Hoffman is a lawyer. He is currently a partner at the Ecobis in Beijing, in China. He has a lot of experience with providing legal advice to the foreign companies on setting up on the tax issues, but as well on the liquidation and various options of the business exit. Mr. Hoffman worked for prestigious law firms in Germany. He is frequently invited as a legal expert by international TV and radio stations such as CCTV and Reuters, and he often publishes in the prestigious magazines. So, Mr. Hoffman, warmly welcome, and I give the floor to you.
Thank you. That's very, very nice of you. Yeah, also from my side, good morning, Europe. Good afternoon in China. I will just go with you today about the exit strategies for different companies, how to do it in China. So, in today's webinar, we will look at different options you might have. It is important to know what company or what entity you have here in China and how to implement your exit if you want to go out of the market. That does not mean necessarily that China is not a good market for you. Maybe you just need to restructure your business because your business model changed. You have other plans. This happens often with the so-called first model, the representative office. We will go in the following slides into that in more details, why that is not really an option for a lot of companies anymore. We'll talk about the wholly foreign-owned enterprise, that's the second option, in a combination with the GV. These number 1 and 2 are the main options that companies here in China have, or that persons in China have. We also will talk about the taxes quickly, because taxes are always important, whatever you do, in whatever business you do. And that also is a very tricky question. The last point, number 4, what you should not do, just walk away. Unlawful company dissolution, that means a lot of, I get asked sometimes, some people just want or ask me, what happens if they don't close the company correctly and just walk away. So these options we want to discuss today, and it's always important to think about when you come to the market, how to exit the market.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard. Before we move to the first topic, I have a just general question. I have heard, and it's quite known, that there are companies who established first themselves in Hong Kong, and then from the Hong Kong they established their subsidiaries in China. Would that be the easiest or easier way how to close the Chinese business by closing the Hong Kong company?
Well, that's true. And many companies use that as a strategy to set first up a Hong Kong company or a company in another offshore jurisdiction, and then as a holding company, and then as a second step, I set up like an entity in China. And if you close the companies completely, then it wouldn't be an advantage. However, if you sell the Hong Kong companies, the China entity, the mainland China entity, would just follow, and that would be much faster than selling your shares in a mainland China company. So it could be an option if you consider that. It's more for selling than for the really closing. But for sure, it is always good to consider Hong Kong or other offshore structure, not only for the exit of your entity, but also for taxes, repatriation, for example, or any kind of legal barrier, legal wall you want to put between mainland China and your headquarters.
Thank you. So maybe we can cover this topic during some next webinars.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go for the first option. I mentioned the representative office is one of the typical companies or one of the typical entities that you can have in China. Representative office has been a long time a very popular entity. Why that? Because it's easy to set up. You know, it's comparatively inexpensive. It goes fast to set up, and you can have some employees in China. You can do some marketing liaison work, and you can source some products in China. However, right now, for a lot of companies or for a lot of persons, the representative office is not the option anymore. You might ask again, why? You know, it was good. Why not? Is it not good anymore? The reason is that the laws changed. The legal laws changed, so it's difficult and more complicated to keep a representative office in compliance. Every year you have to go through a certain procedure to keep your representative office in compliance. Secondly, the tax laws changed. So for most companies it is quite expensive to have a representative office in China these days. It's a cost burden. And thirdly, you're not allowed to run a real business with a representative office. It's often not enough if you want to be real on the market, if you want to issue your fapiaos, the so-called the Chinese invoices. You cannot do this with the representative office. That's why in the last years we did a lot of closing of the representative office, and that's why the company closed down the representative office and set up, for example, a WOFI or another structure. It's still, because it's easy to come with the representative office, it's also easy to go. If you think about a liquidation of a company, you always have to think, or I think it in my mind, like going up the stairs and going down the stairs. So if you come to the China market, you're going up the stairs, you know, and if you turn and go away again, you go down the stairs. You have to go pretty much through the same procedure like when you came. That means also if you come easily, you can go easily. However, it is still more complicated to close down a representative office than setting it up. It's more time consuming. It takes roughly 3 till 6 months. And there are two important steps. The one step is the tax registration, the notice of approval for cancellation of tax registration, and the second important step is the notice of approval of cancellation of business registration. Yeah? And the tax registration is a key part. Why? Because here we have to go to the tax clearance. It's the closing audit required. Normally this last 3 years of the accounts are checked, and all the outstanding taxes need to be paid. And often what we saw, a lot of representative office are not 100% in compliance with the laws and regulations, especially with the tax law. Not that they don't want to, but the laws and regulations are complicated, and it's hard for an accountant in the office to keep in compliance with that and to keep up to date with all the regulations. That's why when you close down the representative office, every of these small issues popping up, and that will delay your closure process. The second thing is the notice of approval for cancellation for registration. Also here I mentioned already, you have to go through all the other authorities that previously approved your business, like for example the SIC or all the others like the State Administration of Industry and Commerce, etc. We have brought you a small case study today because I know it's always easier to understand the difficulties and to see how important it is to consider an exit strategy right from the beginning, and it's better to understand it with a case study. So we have a company F set up a representative office. RO always stands for representative office, if you see the slide, in 2010. Yeah? Now, in 2013, the RO should be closed. During the tax closing, the tax deregistration, as I mentioned before, everything will be checked in details from the tax authorities. The tax authorities found out that there are revenue generating activities. So this again to the issue of a representative office. Representative office is not allowed to do revenue generating activities. If they do, they have to pay the taxes accordingly. So this has been not been paid, the taxes here. And that's why there is a lack of tax from $3.9 million income. Further, this representative office didn't do the IIT. IIT means individual income tax filing for foreign executives. So the representative office has, when they're foreigners working, also when they're Chinese working, file the taxes for these employees. And that's a requirement from the law. However, this didn't happen for this representative office. For the foreigners, why not? Often because the foreigners don't really understand that they might have a tax burden also in China, often because the tax application is done incorrectly when the representative office is set up. As you might know, the chief representative can have two different kind of tax treatment. The one is on his worldwide income, and the other one is only on his China source income. And there often is mistakes being done right now from the start. And that's when you close down the representative office, all these problems just suddenly pop up. It follows, like it has to follow in China, a tax investigation, because you cannot close any company in China, it could be representative office, WOFI, or joint venture, if there are outstanding taxes. Taxes needs to be cleared. As a result, in this case, the representative office had to pay all the taxes and in addition fines. And the fines can be quite high in China. Okay.
So before we move to the winding up of WOFI, we have prepared the first poll for you. And the question is, how long does it usually take to close a company in China? Now you can see the three options, and we would like you to vote for the option you think is the most correct. The first option is 1 to 2 months. The second option is 2 to 6 months. And the third one is 6 to 12 months. So we can see your voting coming. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so now I am closing the poll, and would like to share with you. And the result is that 62% of you thinks that the closing of the business in China, closing the WOFI, lasts between 2 to 6 months. 38% of you thinks it is between 6 to 12 months, and then no one voted for 1 to 2 months. So, Richard, what do you think? What your experience says?
Well, I'm very happy about the answers, because firstly the 2 till 6 months, or actually it would be the perfect time for a representative office, and the majority said that. So that means people listen to what I'm saying. So thank you for that. But we're talking here about the WOFI. The WOFI is a real company, and that will take, unfortunately, a bit longer, 6 to 12 months regularly. But this really depends at the end. So at the end, you are all right. You know, every one of you they said the right words, because it's really up to a lot of government authorities to decide, and up to your compliance status at the end. At the end, it can go really fast, can be done in a few months, and we had also cases where it took more than a year. So at the end, it's open air. You cannot make a fixed time frame for that. Let's quickly go through the WOFI. The WOFI is one of the main company in China. And just to summarize this quickly, a WOFI is a wholly foreign-owned entity. It is very similar to, or there is a limited liability company. It's the main structure that foreigners have these days, and this is also the company that most our clients have when they close down the representative office and normally set up a WOFI. It's 100% controlled by foreign shareholders. And the other option is a GV for sure. In the beginning, to close down a WOFI needs 6 steps. First, you need to have a board resolution. The board needs to decide, okay, let's close down the company. Every WOFI has a board of directors or an executive director. So you have somebody who must make the decision. The second is the board needs to set up a liquidation committee. The liquidation committee is a very important body, and we come back to that later, because this is the new management of the WOFI during the liquidation phase. Then there must be written a liquidation plan, how and to distribute the existing properties, assets of the company. And this liquidation plan must finalize in a liquidation report how it has been distributed. Further, the tax registration has to follow and the further deregistration of the company, and then the company is finally fully closed down. The board or shareholder resolution to close down the company is, like I said, a key aspect of any kind of closing of an operation. There are legitimate reasons, like the expiration of the term. Any company in China is only here for a specific term. Any foreign company, at least, normally could be something like 30 years. So if the term is over, the company can be closed. It can be also renewed, by the way. Or the company had heavy losses. That means if there's a very bad year, we had this in 2008, 2009, a couple of times, that there's bankruptcy coming. Or you have an article, the so-called Articles of Association in your company. The Articles of Association is the main important document for any kind of WOFI. It's the heart of the document. It's the main legal document. And here in this document, you have to also write down your exit strategy. I've seen so many companies, and not many do this correctly. So you have to list down reasons and points when you want to liquidate your company, what shall happen to liquidate your company. This is of key importance to have a smooth closure of your company. If you don't have losses, maybe you don't want to have losses, maybe you want to sell it, or I don't know what you might have in your mind. If you don't have a WOFI, you might have a joint venture, GV. So then you write it in your GV contract what might happen or what should happen, for which reason you want to close down your company. If you close down your operation, there must be a public notice. You need to notify the government authorities within 7 days, and then must be followed by a public announcement. This is really key. So you need to announce to everyone, hey, I'm going to close down my company. We had clients that didn't really want to do this because they said, hey, actually, I don't want to mention that right now because my business will still go on a bit. In fact, your business can go on. That's also very important. You are still able to issue invoices to proceed with the business doing the closing procedure as long as the tax closing didn't happen yet. So you can still go on. And that's why some of our clients didn't really want to announce it. We have to announce it in a local and a national-wide newspaper. But I've seen this announcement. They are normally very small, so I'm not sure how many creditors can really read that. The creditors have therefore the chance to claim their money. If they don't do within a certain time frame, they lose the right to claim their money from the liquidated company. If it's liquidated, it's gone, there's nothing to get anymore. The content of this announcement must be the company's name, the registration ID, the person in charge of the liquidation. There must be a person behind, and his or her contact details, so that the creditors, the unknown creditors, know who to contact. There are also known creditors, and they also need to contact and say, hey, I have an open claim here.
So Richard, I mean, what will happen if the company or the liquidation committee does not make the public announcement? Is it really that necessary?
It is really necessary, because of the reason of the unknown creditors. Everyone should know when a company is going into a liquidation phase. Otherwise, if the company owns you personally money and you want to get that and suddenly it's gone, you would be very unhappy and not in a good mood anymore. So everyone must have the chance to claim their rights. That's why this public announcement is one of the key things needs to be done. But it's hard to see, I have to say. For me, it's a bit hard to find. Sometimes in the big newspaper, it's a small announcement often. To change, to liquidate a company, there's also a liquidation committee or committee necessary. The responsibilities of the liquidation committee or the liquidation committee is extremely important. You must choose someone who is trustworthy, not just give it to someone who can do it or promise to do it quickly. It is important because this committee is taking over the management of your company until it's fully liquidated. So they will clear the woofies property, for example. They will check the creditor's claims. If somebody says, hey, the company is only 10,000 RMB, then the job of the liquidation committee is to check if that's true or not. They're also responsible for the just mentioned public announcement and to prepare the balance sheet and all the detailed list of the properties. They also need to formulate the principles for properties evaluation and computation, how to evaluate and calculate the value of the property. And also it's their responsibility to formulate the liquidation plan and the liquidation report. Liquidation plan is how to distribute the property, and the report is finally how it was done. Very important is also that they're involved in the tax clearance. And also, if there's any kind of lawsuit, this liquidation company takes it over. So normally, you use somebody that you can trust, and somebody, often it's a law firm that helps you with the liquidation. Let's talk about a little bit about the liquidation plan. So how to distribute the liquidation gains. So if the company still has money and everyone knows, hey, this company is going to go liquidated, and everyone is trying to get their portion out of the company's assets, about the company's property. The government in China is following here in international procedures also that we know from other countries like Europe, how to liquidate the assets of the company. First of all, the liquidation expenses need to be paid. I used to work in Germany for a liquidation law firm, and we are always quite happy because first the liquidation lawyers get paid before anybody else. Yeah, but this is the case, the liquidation expenses and any kind of related liquidation cost has to occur. Otherwise, no law firm, no liquidation support would help you to close down the companies. Secondly, it's about staff, people in China, and I think that's very important. People are the assets, and people is the most important thing that any company can have, and therefore the second distribution of the assets and properties should be going to salaries and social insurance so that all the employees get what they need to get. Then thirdly, it is about the taxes. So if there are still open taxes, they need to be cleared here and paid. And thirdly, the secured credit rights. And fourth, the last point, the unsecured credit rights need to be paid. Here we have again that the known creditors need to report their claim within 30 days. We strengthen this again here, we stress it again, because it's very important that you keep the time frame. If you hear about a company getting liquidated, you need to follow these time frames of 30 days or 45 days if you're an unknown creditor. So what about the liquidation report? I mentioned there must be also liquidation report. That's how the company's debts has to be settled during the liquidation. The liquidation report needs to contain certain things: the reason and the time. So why is this company going to be liquidated, and the time frame, how long, when it started to being liquidated, and the procedure, of the liquidation. Then it also includes the results of handling the credits and the debts by the committee. And the handling here, you see the result of handling, that's often up to the negotiation with the creditors. That means a lot of times, that's also why it's important to have a good liquidation committee that can negotiate with the creditors how much at the end they can get out of your company. And then it also includes the result of handling the liquidated property. And all this liquidation report at the end need to have the approval of who? For sure, the big bosses, the one who set up the company before, the shareholders.
I would like to ask all our audience to send a question to us already during the webinar, so we can address them at the end. So please don't hesitate and send any question you might have in the mind. But now, before we will continue with the topic on the taxes, we have prepared the second poll for you. And the question we would like your answer to is how many years back does the tax authority ask or can ask for accounting books? And the option we are giving to you is 1 year, 3 years, or the 5 years. Yeah, I can see that almost no one is opting for the 1 year. And it's almost equal between 3 and 5 years. Okay, so I'm now closing the poll and show you the results. And the results are that no one voted for the 1 year. 47% of you thinks that it should be for 3 years, and 53% that 5 years is the correct answer. Richard, what your answer would be?
I could answer similar like before, right? So it's, again, it depends, but the laws and regulations says normally up to 3 years. It could be shorter if the time frame of setting up of the company is shorter. We had recently the case of a company that set up only for 1 year and then got closed down, so then for sure you can only check 1 year. But normally it should be 3 years. However, and this is the key point, however, if there's any irregularities showing up, popping up during the 3 years audit, that means if in the last 3 years any taxes not has been paid completely correctly, and this is really checked in details, then the authorities have the possibility to go back 5 years or even more. There's no limit to going back till the company is set up. So again, it's important to be in compliance. You at the end to help yourself even if you close down your business. Also, it's a good policy just to be in compliance, helps to do everything correctly, and also at the end you're working more efficiently if you know that everything is done well. So for winding up to deregister a company, it's important to do the deregistration of the tax bureau firstly. That means you have to do the closing audit. All outstanding taxes need to be paid. If the taxes are not paid, I must be really clear about this. If there's still outstanding taxes, and they are not paid, then you cannot close down your company. And as I said, 3 years will be checked. For sure, you hear, if you are talking with other companies that close down the operation in China, they will tell you sometimes, hey, I didn't pay all the taxes and I still could close it down. That might happen, you know, in China sometimes you can still negotiate the fines or whatever, you know, and you just pay them. But the overall rule is you must find an agreement then with the tax authorities about all the outstanding taxes. Further, all the deregistration at all governmental authorities needs to be done. I explained before that the liquidation of the company is like going backwards the steps that you went up before. So you can see all the same authorities popping again up, like if you would set up a WFI in China, but just backwards. You have to go through the SAFE again, that's the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. The Public Security Bureau must give their okay that you're closing down. You need to close down your bank accounts. You need to go to the Statistics Bureau, etc., and tell all these authorities, I think there are around 16, depends a bit on your business, that you're leaving the market, and if they are okay with that. And if they're not okay, then you will have to negotiate with them and ask them why and what you have to do so that you can finally close down your registration. The final deregistration authority is the State Administration for Industry and Commerce, the SIEC. This is the final one. If you have done this, you're good to go. Overall, again, a strengthening on the taxes, because I know a lot of companies have very big difficulties here. It's important to do it correctly. Try to check yourself once in a while if your tax payment is done correctly. It's just a big hassle at the end if you want to close down your operation or change the structure, and it can because of outstanding taxes and penalties. Important is also that the closing procedure has to be done by a professional service firm. CPA, that's the China Public Accountant, needs to help you with that. There's no way you can do it all by yourselves. And the last 3 years, like we just asked in the questions, will be checked for the tax reasons. For the taxes, there are certain documents need to prepare to get the closing. This is, for example, the business license, the tax certificate, the invoices. I thought that's quite interesting. You have to show the tax authorities all your collected Fahrpjausch from the last 3 years. You can imagine how much work it is for them to go through that. Then you have to go through like a self-review, a self-assessment. You tell them, hey, this is the taxes I think I had to pay, and this is what I paid. Then there will be an audit report by an audit firm, that you cannot do that by yourself. And then finally, the third step is the tax review and inspection by tax officials. They will review the audit report, they will review your your report, and inspect everything in details and look if it's everything done correctly. Then you can, if everything is done correctly, if the tax authorities are satisfied with your tax payment, you can proceed with the formal filing of all the deregistration, and then you get the tax deregistration certificate. If you got that, that's a big step forward. Now you're on the big highway to run home with a closed company. We have here again a case study for you today. The typical problems when closing down representative office. So as you know, the head of the representative office is the chief representative. And the chief representative is paying normally IIT, individual income tax. And this will need to be cleared. That means need to be also shown that this has to be done correctly. This requires documents, and now you will maybe scratch your head like this. CR's the chief representative's salary certificate. That means at the end often it's a contract. You need to show the passport copy and all pages of the passport. If you change the passport, the authorities might ask you for your old passport again, as well, as you have to show 2 passports if you still find it. If not, trouble. You have to show potentially your bank transactions. They will check your bank accounts and look if the salary on the account and the salary you declare tax for is matching with the money you received on your account. So this needs to be very carefully evaluated, especially also as many countries have a double tax agreement with China. That means often foreigners think they're doing everything correctly because they're paying part of their salary here in China and part of them, for example, in Germany, and then they pay IIT, for example, in Germany and China, but often it's not really correct. So that might lead to trouble when you close down your operation. That's back to the beginning that what Miller said. It's important to have the right strategy in the beginning and to have the right concept for your business when implementing everything, setting up the first payroll. Make sure that you have the correct advisors also for the tax calculation. You can do a lot of for foreigners. There are many ways to plan efficiency of the taxes. I mean, the foreigners have many ways to reduce the tax burden. At the end, you pay much less tax than in Europe, for example, right? That's easily possible. However, you need to do it correctly. That's all the tricky point, and that's important to do it correctly. Otherwise, if you didn't do it and just do some things that are not allowed to do, it all comes up when you close down the representative office. For the WUFI deregistration, the WUFI is the company deregistration. It could also happen, probably with the taxes that I just mentioned, like the individual income tax. But other problems are, for example, the stamp duty. As you know, when you sign a contract, there's some small stamp duty, stamp taxes, you could call it like this, to be paid. Often this is not done correctly. So if you close it down, then you might have some problems. Or the renting contract. A lot of companies expand, maybe their first one WUFI in Beijing, and then they set up several branches, but they don't have correct renting contracts for all these branches, or they might have renting contracts, but they don't pay the official taxes for that. They don't have the official FAPIAO, and that creates also problems when you close down your operation. We also have right now the cases that one of our clients that we close down doesn't have a renting contract at all. That makes it also a bit difficult to close it down, but we will find for sure somehow a solution. Then also a problem is if the tax is unpaid, the company is subject to a deep tax investigation. That means if the authorities find out something is not correct, they will check everything in detail. And that's again to the years, normally 3 years, but if something is done wrong, it could be like 5 years. And that means not only you have to pay your taxes, the outstanding taxes, could be business tax, could be VAT, could be corporate income tax. You also, in addition, there could be stamp duties and in addition fines, and the fines can be quite high.
You are mentioning the fines. Fines can be quite high. What does it mean? How high? How it is calculated? Is something what the company shall be really afraid about?
The fines for not paying taxes can be quite high. So it means there's a framework, and it can be, if I'm correct, up to 5 times the outstanding tax amount. And there's also each day you delayed some 0.05 or something percentage. I don't have for every taxes the details in my head, but I know it's very easy that you have a small tax burden that you didn't pay correctly, then suddenly the fines are dramatically high. So it's better to get it done from the beginning correctly.
Yeah, sounds like that.
Okay. Problem is if some of our, you we heard it before, some companies say, well, I actually don't like it here anymore. I don't like China anymore, and I don't want to go through the hassle of the closing of my operation. Let's say goodbye. I'm just leaving. Bye-bye, China. this is not my country anymore. I don't like the smog in Beijing, so here I go. I don't stay for the 6 months or 12 months. Here I go. Anyway, is that a good option? Obviously not, you know. Why that? If you're not going through the legal procedure of closing down the company, first of all the subsidiaries, if you might have other subsidiaries in China, will be the target of the authorities to collect the debts. You can say that's not fair, but on the other hand, you know, it could be also fair because it's about, for example, the employees. They need to get their salary, they need to get the social welfare. If you just leave the country, you know, that wouldn't be fair to them. So somebody has to pay for that. So I don't think it's a reasonable way to collect it in some ways. Then also, what also can happen is the foreign shareholders will probably be investigated by the courts of his home country. It might be happening that even if you leave the country, you know, and go back to your home country, there might be still some problems in your home country. We had a big case for that, so it might happen. It's very seldom, but it might happen. And also you might have difficulties to find easily to set up a new operation here in China.
You have mentioned some of the consequences of not closing the company properly. I have a question. Just recently, the new entry-exit law was adopted in China. Could that have some implications, like leaving the country before closing the company properly? Could then in the future have some consequences for obtaining the visa?
Well, the visa issue is for sure a key issue for anyone running a business in China, because in order to be here, you need to have a proper visa. If you don't close the company correctly and just leave the country, you're actually not in compliance. And if you, in addition, didn't pay your taxes and also you're also again not in compliance, then there might be that you don't get a visa anymore to enter the country, or at least not the working visa for a few years, because you have been not in compliance with the Chinese laws and regulations. You know, we have to see what is happening with the new visa laws, as it has just been implemented a couple of months ago, but this might be likely that something like this might happen. We have another case study for you. So a representative office, as I said, the easiest way to set up is a representative office is established by a company that's called M, and they decide to close down, again, for different reasons. And then they thought, this closing is so complicated and difficult, and in Chinese they say it's 太麻烦, huh? So it's like it's not pleasure to close it down. So they said, well, we just go, you know. And so they said, we have a great idea, because every year you have to go with the representative office to an annual inspection of your license. So if it says in the laws and regulations, if you don't do that, the Chinese business government is allowed to revoke your business license. It says, cool, let's just do that, you know, it's just let the business license revoked by the authorities and we are out of the game. This happened in that case, you know, so the business license was revoked. However, what this company didn't expect is that it's not only the business license revoked, also the company M is not allowed to enter to China in the next 3 years. That has a big impact as well. And the legal representative, the person who is mentioned in the articles, are not allowed to work in a senior management position for the next 3 years. So it has a big impact. And this is only for the legally not correctly closing. That's apart from all the things that we said about the taxes, not paying that correctly, and the visa issues that also might happen. So this is also only for the not correctly closing of the representative office. One more thing I want to add here. It is also important for any company, if you close it down, you never know how the property or assets look at the end. So there's also the way to repatriate, to bring out the money that is still left in the country. So it's also important to close them down for that reasons, obviously. If you have still some assets here, you can repatriate it back to your home country.
So we are coming almost to the end of today's webinar. So I would like to encourage you to send your questions so we can address them in a few minutes.
Well, yeah, my summary of having seen so many companies being in trouble and closing down the operation, if you come to China, in the first step, it's very important that you know what you're doing. Be clear about the exit option from day one you're coming into the country. You know, from day one, if you're flying to China, normally you also buy a return ticket. So if you're setting up an operation, be aware of all the liquidation strategies you might have, or the restructuring strategies. Further, keep in compliance with laws and regulations. For example, taxes. If you are not 100% sure that your taxes and the accounting is done correctly, better outsource it to somebody who does it on a professional basis, because it also limits your risk and your liabilities. Do not underestimate the time it's needed for closing down your operation. And overall, like I said, do not leave China without proper deregistration of your business. And if you don't know how to do it, it's always better to ask for some professional advice, somebody who has done it before and is familiar with the procedure, that just helps you at the end to save a lot of trouble and also to save a little bit of money, because it just goes smoother.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Richard, for your insightful presentation, which shows that you have really a lot of experience with these topics. We are now coming to the Q&A session. But before we go into the Q&A session, I would like to bring your attention to our new guideline, which is exactly on this topic. We had a webinar today, Business Exit Guideline. This guideline is going to be published within few days, and you can download it from our websites. The guideline was drafted by Richard, so I think that will be really very interesting reading. So now let's go to the question.
Okay.
Richard.
Okay, the first question we received is the question is, if I started off with an RO and need to change to a WOFI, can I establish a WOFI while closing the RO with the same legal representative? Again, for example, a foreigner. Overall, I would say yes. However, I have to be a bit picky with that. You still can set up an RO, you can close the RO down, and at the same time start with a WOFI. The RO would have a person, the boss of the RO or the leader of the RO is called chief representative, not legal representative. That's a small difference. But you can have the same chief representative, and the same person could be the legal representative in the WOFI later. And you can close and set it up at the same time. No problem. It can be all foreigners. Also, all the board can be foreigners or Chinese. It's up to your decision. If you set up your WOFI, I would like to strengthen again, think about an exit strategy. Also think about the profit repatriation and other things for your ongoing business, how to structure it correctly. Consider a board of, or if you want to have one person, an executive director. These are strategic decisions you need to make. But overall, to your questions, yeah, you can use the same person, no problem at all. The second question is, what happens if a company do not follow the procedure of liquidation? What kind of responsibility is there for a CFO? What can happen to him in China? Well, the CFO if he's mentioned somewhere, if in the document it's shown that who that is, who this person is, then he's also one of the mentioned in the Articles of Association, potentially also a director of the company, then for sure he is also responsible of a proper closing, except it's all done, given over to the management liquidation committee, and then they're responsible for closing down the operation. Then another question I received is, I would like to know according to which law the liquidation will take place. It is bankruptcy law, or which law when the company is still solvent? Thank you. The bankruptcy law is one option. There's a bankruptcy law in China as well, but there's also liquidation law. There are different laws and regulations that apply for it. It's not only one law. We can send you afterwards a list of the different laws and regulations. especially if the company is still solvent, because the bankruptcy is a specific topic. We planned initially to have a big session here about the bankruptcy of a company. If the company doesn't have any money anymore, how to go through that procedure, how to close down the operation. However, this is it's quite complicated and would take another hour, and I think it would just be too much for today. It's anyway quite a complex and technical topic that we're having today, so I think we can do that on another day, or you can also ask me privately, and I'm happy to give you advice on that.
Thank you, Richard. We are receiving more and more questions. Give you some time to review some of them. And I think we will have time only for one or two questions. If you have sent us your question and we do not manage to reply during today's webinar, we will get back to you via the email during the next week. So don't worry if you don't reply to the question you have sent us.
I mean, there's many questions, so it's hard to pick one. And I think the strategy is that we really go back to all of you and trying to answer them later. I just picked one randomly. So is there any penalty consequence for the legal representative if she leaves China without the proper legal procedure? Yes, I mean, there are consequences. Don't do it. If you're leaving China and you want to come back, you better change the legal representative first before closing down the company, or just be involved in the closing process. Otherwise, you might have really difficulties to get a visa or to find a job later in China, to get a working visa, and also to start with paying your taxes again. So better do it correctly. I think that's it from my side. I'm sorry I couldn't answer all these questions, but I'm quite surprised that we're getting pages and pages of questions here in. So that means that the topic is quite of importance in a country that is growing so fast. But I think that's good. Think about the exit, and I'm happy to follow up with each of you with an email later.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Richard, for the presentation. I really believe that it is not our last presentation, that we will do more together. And thank you very much to our audience to taking part, to participating and listening to us. I would like to bring to your attention as well another webinar which we will hold in 2 weeks on Tuesday, 10 to 11 European time, 4 to 5 Chinese time. And the topic of this webinar will be how to get my products through Chinese customs. So anybody who is interested in this topic is warmly welcome to register on our websites for this webinar. Thank you very much for your attention, and look forward to meet you on our webinar series, EU SME Centre series next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.